Okay, hi everyone, I'm John. I'm not going to say the name of my talk either, to not offend anyone, but it's about indexing. I'll cover it in a minute. I am from Fisheye, a solution partner based over in the West Midlands in Shrewsbury. I've been doing Magento for far too long now, and as you can probably see, I've got a bit of an obsession with all things orange, and I seem to start to like collecting badges. So before I get into the talk, if you've seen one of my talks before, you might know that I like to add a little bit of humour here and there. So this time I thought it might be fun to let Twitter decide what the theme of my humorous slide should be. And Game of Thrones won unanimously, so prepare for some dragons. Okay, so let's talk about indexing then in Magento 2. The aims, I want to give you a solid understanding of how indexes work, how they can affect store performance, and give you kind of understanding of how it works in detail, so to help you debug and other things. And lastly, also have a bit of fun. So here we go. Right, so first off, what is an index? So I won't lie, I googled this. This came back. Collecting, parsing, and storing data to facilitate fast and accurate information retrieval. Those are a lot of big and clever words. Basically, I like to see it as a form of caching. Except with a standard cache, you're just kind of saving the output of something. But with an index, we're transforming that data so it's different from when it began. So what does Magento use indexing? Essentially to save repeatedly making the same complex calculations all the time. They're expensive. Magento has a lot of features. And the larger your catalog is, because most of the indexes are catalog related, mainly product related as well. The more those on-the-fly calculations are going to impact your store, and you'll end up with something a bit like this. Okay, so quick bit of terminology. We'll talk about indexing. A dictionary, this is the kind of the original data. So in Magento's term, this would be the original database table, or tables the data stored in. So if an admin user is saving a product in the admin, these are the tables that data goes straight into. The index, this is the final representation of that data once it's been transformed into a different state. And the indexer is the process, whether that's code or whatever else, that basically transforms the dictionary data to the index data. So before we go too much further into indexing, I'm going to have a quick overview of what Magento indexes. Won't cover it all. There's a link there for Magento's dev docs which explains it in more detail. But as I said, it's mainly products, so all of these things here, prices, stock inventory, attribute data, and category associations are kind of the main ones. Just take pricing as an example. So the price you see on the front end of a store isn't just a price field in the database. There's so many things that can influence what that price is. So you've got the main price, you could have a special price. That special price could have a start and end date. There's tiered pricing, customer group pricing, and even things like catalog price rules. Between those four things there, you're probably looking at least nearly 10 database tables to collect data from, to calculate a price to show on the front end. And then think about complex products as well, so configurables, group products, bundles. They've got things like minimum, maximum prices that need to be calculated, and then things like dynamic and fixed pricing for bundles as well. Inventory, again, all that really matters to the customer is whether something's in stock or not, whether they can buy it. Magento likes to call it saleable. But again, this is impacted by multiple things, the quantity, whether back orders are enabled, whether there's a minimum order quantity, so you've only got 5 in stock, but you need the minimum order quantity of 10, that's technically then not in stock. And with Magento 2.3, there's obviously the multiple source inventory that adds even more complexity, but I'm not going to go into that today. Okay, so a whistle-stop tour of indexing. The main thing we need to look at next, though, is the different indexing modes. Default mode called update on save, and another mode called update on schedule. So if we start with save, in this mode, indexes will run immediately after an entity is saved. And to save, saying the word entity a lot of times, I'm just going to refer to products for the majority of this talk now. Yes, it's not just products that are indexed, but it's just easier to get across what I'm talking about. So if you save a product in the admin panel, all of the product-related indexes are going to get saved there and then. And by that, I mean every single index for every single product, not just the one you've saved. So it's not particularly ideal from a performance point of view, especially if you have a large catalog. And worse still, every time a product has its index refreshed, its full-page cache entry is removed. So just think about that for a minute. So if one product in the admin panel, you've just cleared the full-page cache for every single product on your storefront or storefronts. Worse, because every product impacts every single category on your site, all those categories related to all those products will also be cleared from full-page cache. So just to kind of wrap that up, basically saving one product in the admin panel when update on save indexing mode is used, you might as well just flush the cache, to be quite honest. So we have a little bit of a further look at how that works. I've got some reference environment here. It's not particularly important. The only thing I'm going to note is I'm using something called Redis for my caching. It's just so I can show the output on the command line. So if we went to this category, the gear bags in the Magento sample data, we visited the first 4 products. We can then use this Redis command here, this Redis CLI info key space. It will basically tell us how many items are in the cache. So I've got 3 databases here. The first DB0 is session, so we can ignore that. DB1 is for the main cache, which we're also kind of ignoring. Down here at the bottom, I've got DB2. There are 36 keys in here, but you can see there are 5 that will expire. Those are the 5 pages we've just visited. So if we then go back to one of the products we've just visited and have a look, we can see down here, that's not going to get that out of the way. We can see that it's got a hit. Basically, it's been served full-page cache response. However, if we then go into the admin panel and we pick another product, so this beginner's yoga product has absolutely nothing to do with any of the category or the 4 products we just visited, and we save it. Then we go back to the front end again, same product, I can see there's cache miss. It's now not being returned a response from full-page cache. And if we check Redis again, you can see the expires is now 0, so there are no pages left in the full-page cache. So this is kind of a visualization of how update on save works, in my opinion. So let's look at update on schedule. So instead of running straight away, indexes are run on a scheduled task via the cron. By default, this runs every minute. So basically, as a post-update on save, it doesn't run as soon as you save something. This is also known as partial or background reindexing. It's not new to Magento 2. It was in Magento 1, what was then Enterprise, now Commerce Edition, back in 1.13. But as of Magento 2, it's available in both open source and commerce, so it applies to every Magento 2 store out there. So it aims to remedy the issues with update on save by indexing just the data that's been changed. So if we save a product, it will be logged to be updated, and when the cron runs, it will be updated without impacting anything else. So any pages relevant to that record are removed from the full-page cache. That's a lot better. Not going to go through this, it's pretty much the same thing again, and we run the cron, and it still hits, and we have 5 things left in the cache, but yeah, it's a lot better. So you could say that's fine, we use update on schedule, we're all good, we're going to have some lunch, but what if something doesn't update? You've got update on schedule on. Let's take an example in a second. You might panic if something doesn't update, but let's take a merchant example. So this is a little bit of humour, so don't take it too to heart. So I added our most important product to a new category, and it's not updated on the storefront. Just a note there, it doesn't matter what the product is, it's always the most important one. So what could the issue be? Maybe they haven't waited for the cron to run. Maybe we haven't explained or educated our merchants or store admins that they have to wait about a minute for things to change. Perhaps there's an issue with the cron. Perhaps varnish isn't configured properly. Maybe the indexes have worked perfectly, but because varnish cache, the page hasn't been purged from the cache, it's not updated. Or maybe there's an issue with indexing itself. So that merchant request comes in, and then a developer says, oh, we can just run a manual reindex on the command line. Yes, that will work, but we're back here. We've just cleared the cache for the whole site again. And more than that, it's a reactive fix, it's not a preventative one. What's to say the merchant doesn't do the same thing tomorrow and the day after, and we have to keep manually refreshing the indexes. So before we go into how it works, can I just get a quick show of hands on who has had to run a full manual reindex on the command line on a production Magento 2 site? Thought that would probably be the case. We've all done it, me as well. So, yeah. Okay, so how does it work then? How does update on schedule actually work? So we mentioned the cron, I'm not going to cover that too much. The two things in bold there, MySQL triggers and changelog tables are what we're going to concentrate on. There's also PHP involved, obviously, code-wise. And because it's Magento, there's a bit of XML. So let's focus on triggers and changelog tables. So the process for update on schedule working actually sits completely outside of the Magento application. The logging part of the record, sorry. So when update on schedule is enabled, Magento creates what are known as MySQL triggers in the database. And if you switch between the indexing modes in the admin, it will actually add and remove these based on the mode you're currently in. So basically, when you change a specific piece of information, so say it's a product again, there's a row in the database for that piece of data, a MySQL trigger will pick that up and it will log it in a changelog table with the ID of the product in this example to be indexed next time the cron runs. So the changelog tables basically are checked when the cron runs, and yeah, so each dictionary database table will have a corresponding changelog table. Some of them have maybe mapped to one, might be multiple dictionary tables, and the changelog table is always based on the index name. So if we have a quick look at a real-world example, I've picked inventory because it's easiest. It's not MSI. It's the kind of the default, or I guess now deprecated inventory, but the principles are there. But we need to get acquainted with the relevant database tables. So the first one is the catalog inventory stock item table. If I just switch to my database, is that visible enough for everybody? Yeah. So if we look at this, the catalog inventory stock item table, there are 26 rows of data, everything to do with quantity and stock that you could want for a product. So there's quite a lot of information there. There's an example of the triggers that are set. Next table, we'll skip back to the slides, is the changelog table. And you can see it's just a very basic table. It's got version ID and entity ID. So version ID is just an auto-incrementing number, and entity ID is the ID of the product that has been logged for index. So this comes from the product ID column back in the main dictionary table. Okay, skip back again. And then we've got the catalog inventory stock status table. So this is our index table, the final output table. So this has just got 5 columns, not 26, so hence the kind of less data to query and work with on the front end. So this literally just contains product ID, website ID, stock ID, and then we've got the quantity amount and the stock status. And that's just is it saleable, yes or no, essentially. That's all it's been condensed down to, so there's a lot less data to query. Okay, and finally we have this table called mview_state. So mview stands for materialized view. This table is the overarching table that looks after the data for all the different indexes in Magento. If I skip back to the database again, go to the mview state, you can see all the different index types. For developers, these strings here will probably be familiar to the things you see on the command line. But yeah, as you can see here, we've got a mode column, and on my instance here, they're all enabled. That means update on schedule is being used. If they're disabled, it means update on save is being used. And you can see on the right here, we have a version ID column. So this has the final number, the last ID that's been processed from the changelog table. So from in the inventory one in this example. Yeah. So, also worth noting that this is kind of points you to the changelog table in most cases as well. So catalog inventory underscore stock and catalog inventory underscore stock underscore CL for changelog. Okay. So let's have a little bit of a walkthrough. Let's try changing something and seeing if it updates, essentially. So I'm going to have a little bit of a demo. And I'm also going to do something very silly. Please don't do this on a production site. I'm going to directly edit the database. So if we start back in our stock item table, we're going to use product with ID 1 here. It's got a quantity of 10. That is our lovely Joust duffel bag. I like this product, not maybe just because it's the ID of 1 and I always use it, but I've just added a little thing here to make it obvious how much stock we've got left. So could somebody give me a number, positive number, please? I got 42 there first. We're going to go with 42. I like that. Okay. So if I just commit that, oh, sorry, before we do anything, I've not actually saved that change. If we jump back into the changelog table, we can see the current version ID is 26. That was for ID 1 again. But if we also go into our enview table, we can see catalog inventory stock version ID is also 26. So we're up to date basically. Everything's been indexed. Life is good. If I now go and commit this change to the database, 42, you can see back now in the changelog table, right at the bottom, we've now got a new entry, 27. Again, 1 in here because the item is product ID 1. But you'll notice in our stock status table, the quantity is still 10, so nothing's happened yet. But as you can see, nothing's happened in Magento here. It's just database related. So the next thing I need to do now, because I'm just running a local install and I don't have cron running in the background, I just need to manually run the cron. So we set that running, and then we come back in here and we refresh. There we go. Now it says 42. That's the whole process. Yes, there's a bit of PHP code there in the middle when I run the cron to check the version IDs and update the tables, but essentially this all happens within the database. We also go into the enview state table and we can see ID of 27, so we're up to date again. And if we refresh our product, here we go, 42 left. Simple as that, really. Not too much more to it. It isn't an overly complex thing. I know indexing update schedule can seem like a mystery, but it's fairly straightforward. I will skip through all this. Actually, just a quick check. So when we do run the cron, this bit of XML here is in the Magento indexer module. It's a cron schedule task, and it runs every minute, and it will fire this execute method in the update enview class. This goes through a few other classes in typical Magento style, and we end up with this class here. So we're getting the latest version from the changelog table. We're running a loop until we processed all of them, and then we're running an execute against an action. And the actions are based on the specific indexer. So in our example, this is the inventory indexer, and this basically maps to this class here. So you can see we've got this catalog inventory model indexer stock class. It doesn't have a method, doesn't need to say execute, it's just assumed. You can also see the ID and view ID here. These are the same things we saw in the database table earlier. Right, so then we've got execute method and typical Magento style, like I said, another 5 method calls. Eventually, the data is updated, and that's where we got back to where we were. So, with all that in mind now, back to our original merchant issue. Now we've got a bit more power, now we know what's happening underneath the hood, maybe we can debug a bit more. So one common issue, thankfully a kind of fixed common issue, but a common issue if you're running any stores on Magento 2.1, hopefully for not much longer, because security is about to end. But early versions of 2.2 as well, haven't got the exact details of when it was fixed in 2.2. You can have an issue where version IDs in the changelog table and the enview state table can get out of sync and basically nothing will index. So what I mean by that is if we go back to the most important product in the world, I've decided this product is because it's got the word endeavour in it, sounds important. We've added it to the sale category. Key things to note is the product ID is 11 and the category ID is 37. So if we go into the catalog category product table, we can see it's been logged there, category and the product ID. So this is a dictionary table for product and category associations. We can see it's logged in the changelog table. All good. Notice that the version ID there is 5. Then we go into our index table, and the record's not there. We've given it a minute. We've checked all the other stuff. Everything's definitely working. So let's check our enview state table. So you can see there, the version ID is 247. So it's way ahead of what the changelog table is. And this used to come, we've never been able to fully pinpoint exactly, but Magento at times will kind of clear those changelog tables, or we'll get the auto increment ID might have got refreshed or something else, and it's got out of sync. So because the ID version is 5 in the other table and 247 here, you've got to make 242 changes before anything's going to get processed again. So you have to basically manually update that version ID. Thankfully, in latest versions of Magento, 2.2, like latest versions of 2.2 and all of 2.3, Magento will kind of reconcile this for you. As soon as you run the cron task runs, it'll make a check, and if it sees that the auto increment ID of the version table is out of sync with the mview version ID, it'll fix it. So just a few useful tips and tools. It's a really handy command, bin Magento indexer status will basically kind of do what I've shown you in the database. If there's anything that has been added to a changelog table because it's been updated in the admin but hasn't yet been processed by the cron, this command will do that, and it will show you here, see in red, I've got a few items marked as 1 in backlog. That means they're in changelog tables but haven't been processed yet. Other useful tools, so all the examples I've shown you with the MySQL client is something called Table Plus, really, really handy. It also supports Redis if you ever want to dig into what data is in the cache. A couple of cron-related things here. There's a Mage Mojo cron module which can help indirectly with indexing because it just helps fix some of the cron issues in terms of performance and parallelization, not making sure things don't run. You don't get duplicate cron runs essentially. And the bottom one there, the cron job manager, is a bit like AOE scheduler from Magento 2 if you've ever used that back in the M1 days, which is basically allows you to view all the cron schedules from the admin panel rather than having to dig directly into the database. Right, I'm not saying we're never going to need to manually reindex on the command line on a production site. Even if you're going to dig into the data like I've done there, you might still need to reindex there and then to make the merchant happy, get things back to where they need to be. If you can take a snapshot of the database or the data before you do so you can try and debug it, great. But if you really, really need to run a manual reindex, I would recommend this method. So basically what this does, indexer set mode real time. This will set indexer back to update on save. I don't know why they've used different naming conventions here. Real time is update on save. So we set back to update on save. We reset all the indexes, so we invalidate them. And then we run the reindex, the full manual reindex. And then after that's finished, we then set back to update on schedule. The idea of this is to try and make sure while we're running our full reindex manually on the command line, we're not interfering with things being indexed via the cron. Okay, not going to go through these now. I've put a few kind of cheat sheets, if you like. So index types, what the dictionary tables are, what the indexer name is, what the changelog tables are, that kind of thing. So I will send these slides out shortly. There's a few of the main ones. Right, and finally, a few whatabouts. So I haven't mentioned flat catalog tables. That's for a reason. It's actually because Magento says not to use them. There is no real benefit anymore to just add another layer of complexity, more things to try and find. There are enough performance improvements now that you shouldn't need to use them. Maybe if you've got an absolutely humongous catalog, maybe you do, but for the most part, you probably don't need them. URL rewrites. I've added these here because they were indexed in Magento 1. I've seen many a time people go, oh, there's a rewrite's not there, or let me just reindex. Well, it's not going to do anything because they're not indexed anymore. They are only generated when you save a product or a category or a page. There's a handy module there that basically will allow you to bulk regenerate all the rewrites. Okay, so parallelization and optimization. So this is fairly new. Magento 2.6. This basically allows for a bit more scalability of some of the larger index tables. This applies to category associations and pricing. So category index tables now are split per store view. If you have multiple store views, you'll have multiple index tables. Same goes for prices. By default, it doesn't do anything, but you can set different modes so you can split the pricing index tables by website or customer group or even both. There's a link there as well to read more about it. So, just to wrap up then, should you use update on save? No? Should you reindex via the command line? Ideally not. And should you use update on schedule? Yes. Okay. One thing to take away is just, like I said a minute ago, if you need to reindex manually, then fine, but just think about it before you do. Think about maybe why hasn't it updated? Maybe try and dig into it, try and fix this long term rather than just focusing on the short term. Excuse me. Yeah, it says quick summary of everything. And that is it. I was doing Game of Thrones GIFs, so it felt like I had to just add that at the end, just for no real reason, just felt like I needed to. last thing, quick plug for something I'm working on. It's coming soon. It's going to be like a online learning tutorials type site. And that is it. Link to the slides there. But thank you very much. If you've got any questions, go for it.